Welcome back to the Ultimate Homeschool Community Podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Hernandez. A lot of our kids nowadays are learning so much about social emotional skills, but not a lot of us are learning so much about the inside of our body. And so today we have Darcy with us, and Darcy is from Body Literacy Lab for Kids, and she is going to share with us some really important information, especially if you want your young ones to not only have all the skills for the outside of their body, but the inside. Welcome, Darcy. So glad to have you here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today. So happy to be here.
Yes. So I know that you have come from a very vast background. Can you share with our audience a little bit about yourself and why you got into this in the first place?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. I'll try to keep it really brief, but I started as an RN, and I did that for several years until I started having my family, and then I decided to stay home. And as the years went and my kids started entering school, I very quickly realized that was not the path for us, and began homeschooling my kids 14 years ago. And as most of you probably know, when you start homeschooling, it feels like your mind just opens up to so many other possibilities. It's like all the boxes start breaking open and you can start seeing things from a totally different perspective. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey with health and seeing food and nutrition totally differently than I ever did before, mostly just because of the beautiful women I was surrounded by, which I was so grateful for. Um, but as my journey continued, and after I had my fourth baby, my health went from being really great to a huge rapid decline, to where I could barely walk around the block. I went from running marathons to hardly able to walk. And it was a journey of about 10 years after, or well, 8 years after that, just trying, but not really understanding what was going on with my body, and not really listening to what the doctors were telling me, because they were just like, you need to take this organ out, or it just didn't make sense to me. They never could explain to me the why I was supposed to do the things they were telling me to do. They just were laying out these things for me, and it for me, maybe it's my childish brain, like I needed to know the why behind all of it. I was a big questioner, and no one could really explain it to me in a way that felt good to me. And so um, my health hit at like an ultimate low about 4 years ago, and I was done being feeling the way I was feeling. And so I just feel like it was such a gift that I was shown functional medicine. And in my searches, that came to me. And it was finally like someone was hearing me and showing me the why, and able to really show me what was going on with my body. And I had my own functional nutritionist, and it was so eye-opening to really see what was going on in my body. And I just thought, like, I'm a nurse. I went through nursing school. I never learned these things about my body, ever. It was not something that was taught. And so I was determined to take my own education into my own hands. I went back to school. I got my functional nutrition certification and started seeing my own clients. I was like, I was doing it for me. I went back to school because I wanted to heal me and take care of my family. And yet, along the way, I was like, people need to know this. They need to know their own bodies. And I started out working with women, and specifically with women and hormone changes and all the things. And I loved it. And yet it was like these women were kind of past the willingness to learn for themselves. They were like, you can't treat an old dog new tricks or something, like that perspective. It felt like that was the response I was getting. And yet I just felt so strongly like we need to be taught this from the time we're young. And that's when the idea came to teach kids and teach them from a young age, so that when they get to my age, they're not just learning these things for the first time and trying to change their life at 40 years old, right? So anyway, that's where Body Literacy Lab was born. And because I'm a homeschool mom of 14 years, I was like, that is the natural place to start, because I know these people are looking for things to teach their kids. And I've just had such an amazing response from the homeschool community. It's been almost a year since I started Body Literacy Lab, and I've put over 100 families through my program, and it's just been so incredible, and it's growing all the time. So that's how I got to where I am today. And I just feel like I have the best job ever.
Yes. Okay. So much to unpack here because with functional medicine, like you said, you didn't learn any of this in school, right? Like that's been proven. They don't really teach nutrition. They don't really share about why it's important to have nutrition. And so coming from an early age, especially being a homeschool mom and seeing the connection of how that impacts your entire life, I have myself been to functional medicine and seen how quickly it's like, wow, they actually see me, they hear me, like I'm not crazy, right? And it how much more can we empower our children to have that body autonomy if they don't know what they're supposed to, what they're supposed to have for their bodies. Can you share a little bit about the program and how you help students to learn in a way that's enjoyable and fun and keep them engaged? Because I know right now that's a big thing is we've got all these kids that are running around wanting to do a billion things and like how do we get them to sit down and do something? Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. And um, first off, like the whole idea behind what I do is that when kids understand the why for themselves behind their bodies, like what's going on inside, that then they choose for themselves to eat differently, to sleep better, to, their daily lifestyle choices are theirs, not because mom's like telling them to do this or to eat these foods or whatever, but that's why I want to teach the kids the why. But when I first started proposing this idea to a few friends, and one friend who's a homeschooler but also a teacher, or was a teacher for many years, she's like, "How are you you're gonna do this online? Like, how are you gonna keep kids engaged?" And I was like, "I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out. Like, I know it's possible." And so I feel like I've kind of cracked the code on that, and it's been so fun. It's just for me, it's all about story and activity and hands-on through the screen. They're playing games, we're singing songs, and even the teenagers, they can laugh and giggle, but they're still singing the songs for months after class. And and there's so much interaction in the chat and poll questions and things, just like keeping them engaged through the whole class instead of just like sitting through a lecture, at least in my live classes. Now I have some that aren't live and some that are. So my love is in the live classes, and that's where I feel so passionate about it. But yeah, and a lot of moms are like, well, do I really want to put my kids in front of another screen? And maybe not. Maybe they don't want to. And I just feel like this is such a unique opportunity and things. It's something that's not taught like generally anywhere. So, if you can sacrifice 1 hour online a week, like this would be a good place to go.
I'm glad you mentioned about the screen time because yes, like even in our program that we have, we do mostly outside. We tend to stay away from screens as much as possible, but there is a lot of trend that we've seen going to online learning just because of the opportunity that it gives. Even there's several universities that are now offering even free classes for homeschoolers to take. They don't get credits or anything, but it's like, you can take that class online. And so we see the trend, but then we also see the backlash. And the backlash is really just because there's time on the tablets or time on the screens where they're just wasting time and just entertainment purposes only. And that's really where you start to see that degrade in parents wanting to allow screen time. But what you've got here sounds like it's very engaging. And anytime you learn with song, you're going to understand it and remember it way better. So that is super fun to hear about. And the fact that you have teenagers. So is the curriculum the same for all students, or do you have certain breakouts for different age levels? What age is it really for?
Yeah, I basically divide my groups into kids and teens. So like 6 to 11 year olds, I consider my kids, and then 12 to 17 are my teenagers. And when I do live classes, it's divided like that. Now, the kids will get the kids recordings and the teens get the teen recordings, but the the topics are the same between the two age groups. We're teaching the same foundations. It's all about blood sugar, gut health, nervous system, circadian rhythm, and yet, when I'm teaching with the teens, we can go a little bit deeper, just have different kind of interactions, right? Depending on the topic, like last month in my membership, we talked about hormones. Obviously, I'm not going to talk to a 7-year-old about hormones the same as I'm going to talk to a teenage boy or a teenage girl. And so that particular month was very much like each class had its own separate curriculum. The girls were divided from the boys. It was very specific to the age group. So it kind of depends on the class, but they're all learning the same things just at a different level.
Right. That's great. And I was that was going to be my next question was how do you have it divided like for girls anatomy versus boys anatomy and like the different nutritional needs for each and the age levels and everything. So that's great. And just breaking it up the way that you have it makes it very simple probably for parents as well because that can also be a challenge of like okay, I've got 10 different learners or I've got, five different kids here and we've got, so many different things going on at once. How do we all come and do this together? And since it is multi-age learning, do you do tests? Do you do group projects? How are the children interacting with each other online, or is it more individualized where they're coming on doing their own work and then getting back, to the next lesson on their own? I know you said you have live classes, so how does that all work together?
Yeah. So my original signature course, I taught it several times live, and now it's all pre-recorded. It's broken down into modules, and they're just doing that at their own pace. And each module has like a challenge, something to do at home, and it's really like when we do live classes, they come to the class, we're interacting and learning in class, and then they take what they learn and take it home into a challenge at home. So like for instance, one of the challenges is to eat 40 different plant foods that week, and they're like writing down all the different foods they're eating, and they're doing it as a family. And everything I do is like family based, family pricing. If you have three kids, 11 and under, they all get in for this one family price. They're doing it together, um, and the membership is for the whole family. So it's really like come and learn and enjoy and interact and then take it home and do. I have a workbook that they can do for each class and each module, that they can do at their own. And I also provide like a deep dive, more like a PDF that's like a review of what we learned. For the teenagers, they get a little deeper dive and then a challenge. So that's kind of how it works. We don't do tests, and we do like a lot of review in the signature course, and then we'll come back and review things as we go, but there's not like tests or quizzes or anything like that. It's just fun review in class.
That's good. I know there's a lot of parents that are like, "Oh, my kids hate testing," or "We're avoiding testing." So my biggest thing is like if they can show proficiency and they can show that they understand what they've learned, why do we need to have a test? Like that to me is enough.
Yeah.
So
And
when
really along those lines, I was just gonna say, yes, having proficiency or passing a test, I don't know. But the point of this is to apply it to their daily lives. Like they're
exactly.
actually using science every day. They're taking care of their body, they're making different choices, and that's like no test is gonna show that they have learned that, and
Right.
like like their choices will, right?
Right, right. So with your students, have you had any of them come back and share a little bit of either what they've learned or how it's changed their life in certain ways, like things that they have implemented from class that really has impacted their life in a positive way that you could share?
Yes. I wish I was more prepared to share. I've had many come back and give me testimonials and feedback on what they've done, but I would just say like the general message that I get from moms, because they're the ones usually communicating it, is, my kids are now looking at food labels and they're telling me like, Mom, I really shouldn't be eating that. That's going to send me on the blood sugar roller coaster. Or I just did this big basketball game. I don't need sugar. I need real food. They're telling their moms this, um, and it doesn't, it's for some kids, yes, it happens overnight. They're like, want it right away. They're like, yes. And then I think for some and for most of us, and for me and my experience is like, I needed a lot of time and repetition and going to class. My program was 14 months, like going to class every day and learning it over and over again until it was finally like, okay, I know this, and I still make mistakes and don't always choose the best thing, but I just think that ongoing learning, which is why I created my membership, which is just that. Where they get the signature course, and then they graduate into the membership, and it's where we go into deeper topics like hormones. This month we're talking about liver and detox. Next month it's about skin, so it's just taking the foundations and then adding to it and then hearing it over and over again. Remember, like, this is all related to the nervous system and stress and so it's always tying back to those foundations they learned. And yet we're continuing down this cool path of body literacy. So yeah, amazing feedback. I just love my students so much. And I would say, like, direct from the mouth of kids. I have this girl, I think she's probably 16 by now, but I had accidentally forgotten to record a class that I did last month, and she, I decided to just offer it again and record it because I needed to have it in my membership. And she's like, totally, I'll come again. I love your classes. Like, she was just going to show up to and hear it all a second time because how much she loved being in class. And so, that wasn't necessarily like I'm applying it and doing all these things, but these kids really like being in it.
That's awesome. I think as if you can get the buy-in for them to want to hear the information and want to learn the information, that's just as much as the battle. And really, that's part of it. Like, okay, you might not implement it right now, but you'll at least have, like you said, the foundation so you can implement it when you're ready or when you feel compelled to do so. It's just like, bringing the horse to water. You can't make them drink, but you can bring them to the water. So as long as they know it's there, um, that's really important, right? So in your membership, you mentioned that that's like the ongoing piece. Um, does membership have classes, like you said, you did the hormones, and that was all very separated out for age brackets and gender and all of that. Uh, are all of the classes like that, or do you take one group class and it's all kids and teens, or is that broken up as well? And how does the membership work?
Yeah. I don't ever teach the kids and teens together. It's always kids and teens. They have their own separate class. It was for the hormones, I decided to separate the boys and girls so we could have like a really open conversation. But some of the boys are going in and watching the girls recording and vice versa, and it's really helpful for them. It was just being in that live class, they could just be there and it was actually a totally different experience having them separated. It was pretty fun, the way that they interacted and stuff. But the monthly membership is I wanted it to be valuable but not so demanding. So it's one class a month and one topic, and then they have their follow-up, their workbook and their review sheets and the challenge for the month. Um, but it's just one class a month for the membership, and they can stay as long as they want. They can cancel whenever they want, but I have like the whole year of topics laid out for them. And so, yeah, that's how the membership works. And really, some people ask me, can we just join the membership? And I have to tell them no. Like, you got to do the foundations first. It's so, so important to do that first. And they can actually join both. They can get the course and join the membership at the same time. But yeah, it's so important for them to have that foundation. So.
That's good to know about being able to join the membership only after you do the foundations course. I love the fact that you're talking about not only the functional medicine side, like, but how everything ties back together. It's taken you and myself and several others, right? We're just figuring this out. And man, if I could have known this earlier on, about how the stress plays and how the nervous system works and all of that, and how the emotional side of this comes in, how much further along, or how could you have done your life different? Like, you know what I'm saying? Um, and
Mhm.
so for them to be able to learn this from such an early age, it makes so much more sense. And then with homeschooling, you really have the ability to go out and make it happen. So you're talking about you have it in family units and you're doing more things as a family. Is there challenges where, like, they're going to the grocery store and reading labels? What are some of the challenges consisting of? Can you share a little bit, just little snippets from your membership and like the different challenges that you've had in the past?
Yeah. Like for my membership, I'm just thinking back on last month. So we did hormones. So like the girls had a different challenge. Their challenge was to start tracking their cycle and different things to really watch for with their cycle and how to track. So that was the girls. The boys had a challenge because of the things we talked about with hormones was to pick a physical goal. that really required them to use their muscle and their bodies because that's what these boys, teenage boys, need. And set this goal and check back in and share the things that they're doing, and something that's kind of hard to achieve, something that's going to take a lot of effort. From the signature course, I'm thinking like the gut health one. That was the one where it was like plant diversity. We want to get as many plant foods as possible. So track, we want you to hit 40 plant foods if you can. And that's like red apples and green apples both count for one each because they're a different, different variety, right? And those are good for the gut. So that was fun to see them all writing it down. And then they would take a picture and share it in our community. Um, the blood sugar one, this is my favorite actually, and it's not about like going out and practicing, but it was um doing this fun, it's kind of a secret but when you get in, but it's a wrap, a blood sugar wrap that we have inside. And so I performed it for them and then they get to do it themselves and send it back to me in a video form. But that's where they're like really sinking in that song, that and remembering the things about blood sugar that they need to remember. So that's a very different type of challenge that we did. Some of it's like tracking how many hours they're spending outside, and trying to be outside more hours of the day, getting out early in the morning when they wake up, getting that sunlight in their eyes. So those are a few of the things that we've done.
I love that. And making it a variety where it's not just like, oh, fill out this worksheet and do this, turn in this assignment or whatever. It makes it more memorable and impressionable. What, so you said you have as young as 6, is that correct? Really? It's like for
Mhm.
6 and up. So do you have any parents that are asking like, well, how do I get my preschoolers? Or like, what things do I start for my really, really littles?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I haven't had people ask too much. And honestly, I've had little 4-year-olds sitting on their bigger siblings' lap, like in the classes too. So it's not like they can't be there. It's just the speed at which we can move, if they're answering questions and stuff, it kind of slows us up. And it's so interesting. I'll have 6-year-olds that'll give me feedback, like their mom will give feedback and be like, yeah, I think it could be more challenging, and then I have 12-year-olds that are like, it went a little fast, so it's like everyone is on such a different level, and that's why I love it because I don't know, I feel like any of them can benefit from it.
Mhm.
Um, but and maybe a 4 or 5-year-old would be fine in it. It's just like in the live classes, that's where I feel like it matters more because we want to be able to keep moving at the right pace as when we're in live class. So if you have a 4-year-old and you buy the signature course that's all pre-recorded, they could totally learn from it and benefit from it.
And mom and dad too.
Oh, yes. That's been a huge piece of feedback is mom usually, because she's usually the one that's there is like, I'm learning so much alongside my kids. And I actually, as part of kind of a bonus in my membership, because in my membership, the only thing I promise is one class a month, with the resources that go along with it. But in January, I actually offered a parent class because I felt so strongly about parents really understanding teenage hormones and not, I mean, puberty starts as early as like 8 or 9 years old. So like
Mhm.
really understanding from the beginning and how, and looking back on my own experience, especially with my teenage boys, it's just like, oh, I wish I had handled it differently. They're in their 20s and um, I'm learning a lot. So, and in fact, my almost 22-year-old son has taught me a lot about when I was teaching the hormone class for the boys. I recruited his help. And so I just think parents, we all need this. And this is not something we were taught either. So I promise if you show up to class with your kids, you're going to learn something.
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned about hormones starting much earlier because I think a lot of times we think, oh, well, once they're actual teenagers, then it really gets into it. But and maybe we can go a little bit into body systems here, but can you share a little bit about how, especially for boys, girls are very noticeable. Sometimes boys maybe I feel like aren't as noticeable. Can you share a
Mhm.
little bit about that piece?
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about girls first, but they're, around 8 or 9 years old, their hormones start shifting. They start producing a little bit of progest or estrogen, and but the biggest signs you'll see in those girls, and it's not, a lot of us think like, okay, when they start their period, this is when everything's really beginning. But it's really been going on behind the scenes for 2 to 4 years before that happens. And so their appetite will increase. That's one big sign. And their emotions will start to go all over the place. And I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I, now that I'm really aware of it, I really learned this. My older daughter is 17, so I didn't know this when she was at this stage, but I'm like, oh wow, yeah, she is changing a lot and just like huge emotions. Um, and then the girls, like within a year or two before their period starts, that's when they have their huge growth spurt. And this is all puberty that's creating this, all this growth hormone. And you'll see those girls pop up. And then as soon as their period starts, their growth almost stops. They'll grow another inch or 3 inches after they start their period. And that's it for girls, And then of course we have the whole cycle thing. But for boys, they usually start, or they can start as early as 9 years old, but sometimes those boys don't start puberty until 15. So, there's this big wide range, and of course there's all this stigma and it's hard for these boys, the ones that feel like they're slower or behind or things like that, but just know like it's coming. It's not going to impact who you are as an adult. This is very normal, but um, these boys, they like some of the first signs that they'll get is acne. They'll start getting these weird little pimples. They get, like pubic hair and different body hair. That can be the first sign. And then, their voice will start deepening because their voice box is actually growing and thickening, which is different from the girls. They get that a little bit, and these boys, their rib cage actually expands and, all this growth, but their growth is so much slower and it comes later and so they're not growing until 14, 15 sometimes, and they'll keep growing longer. Um, so yeah, I just think it's so important for us to understand because for me, with my teenage boy, when I was talking to my 22-year-old, he just said, Mom, the hardest thing for me was that it was just kind of brushed over. Like it wasn't recognized as a thing, as a challenge. Where girls were just like given all the excuses in the world, like life is really hard for them. They have to do all these things. And yet for him, he would like come out in these bursts of anger and he was just, okay, just stop being a jerk. Like, don't be so mean to your sibling or like cut it out. And for him, it was like he didn't know how to control all this like built up energy.
Mhm.
And as a mom, I didn't know that. And I just thought he had an anger issue, like, and so
Yeah,
knowing that
we've
now, and I
experienced.
asked him, like, yeah, I was like, so what helped you, and anyway, he kind of just did it on his own. And it was this physical activity and having this huge goal that he set for himself and really just working hard and being tired. And, there was a lot more to it than that. But
Right, right.
anyway,
We've experienced that too with my son. He's now 10. And yeah, I'm like, why are we getting so angry? Like, we were such a happy kid and now we're like so angry. But since you're mentioning, it starts happening earlier around 8 or 9, I'm like, oh, that's when we started getting more aggressive or like having more energy that we didn't know what to do with. And so this is where, coming to your class and really helping them understand what they're going through so they don't feel like they're crazy or like that it's going to get brushed over. Because you're right. I think a lot of times we focus more on, oh, well, the girls have to go through all these other things and the boys, they're just there. They get brushed
Mhm.
over. And
Yeah.
that's not really the case. So I'm glad that there is now something for them. In terms of the nutritional side of things with how you're sharing, we know there's like a million and one diets out there or like lifestyle choices for food and everything. For instance, like we avoid certain foods because we have allergies, but we also do more of like a biblical diet. So in your course, do you talk about the different options of diets like paleo, keto, all of these other things, or where do you come from on the nutritional standpoint, just in case somebody's like, oh, I don't know if I want to follow that nutrition, or is it not as focused on?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and actually not something that I have taught to them is, the different diets. There was not space for it for sure in the signature course. Might be worth diving into in the membership, so that's a great idea. As far as my stance on things, I definitely don't take a stance. at all. But I do teach about all the different macronutrients and the things that they
Okay.
do in the body. And so, like, I do teach that animal protein is the easiest way to get the different amino acids and the things that they need for building muscle and helping their liver and all these things. But I, talk about the plant options as well. And
Okay.
so, no, I'm not like saying you have to eat animal protein if that's something that people don't do, but
Yeah.
I do talk about it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
You show pros and cons or like how you can do either way, essentially. Like here's this, but here's this as well. Options.
Yeah, like you can also get protein from beans and grains, but in order to get all the amino acids you need, you have to have like a huge variety to, be able to build this um, kind of conglomeration of amino acids to do the good that it needs to in your body. So, yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. No, that's great. I'm glad that you've at least got a good foundation for that because there's so many diets out there, especially portrayed for girls, like, oh, you need to eat this diet or here's this to lose weight or whatever it is. It's like, no, 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 no. We eat for health and our focus is on being healthy and having a good foundation for our body to grow from, not so much like what can a diet do for me? It's more like what do I need to eat to sustain myself better.
Yeah. Yeah. And we definitely talk about that, like having enough fuel and also just the macronutrients and the fuel that are going to help keep a more stable blood sugar. That's something that we talk about all the time. So, yeah, not specific diets, but because I
That's
don't think
good.
kids need to talk about diet,
No.
you know what I mean? Like, and I guess, and it will come up more in the membership, but I definitely want girls to know that they need to eat and
Hmm.
that it's really, we talk about that when we're talking about the hormones is like these girls will, as teenagers, have this ideal like toothpick image or whatever it is that they need to be. And so they will overexercise or undereat, and that's when their periods will stop. And so, teaching them like what's going on, why that's happening, and why it's so important that they actually continue cycling and ovulating every month. And like, you need nutrition, you need calories, you need carbohydrates, I don't know. I just think, I guess I'm looking back on my own experience with that, and it's a pretty ugly one. And so,
Uh-huh. Yep.
trying
Same.
to share that message with them that it's okay for girls to eat. I
Yeah.
can't say how many girlfriends my boys brought home that like refused to eat in our home. And I was like, this is so sad. Like, you need
Yeah.
food too. We all need food,
That's
So,
that's so important. Well, this has been such a pleasure just hearing about your program and how it can benefit not only the kids, but also the adults, and how the family can really work together with these challenges and just do continuation of learning with the community. Where is the best place for the audience to find you? If somebody wants to look up your program, where would you like them to go?
yeah, I mean, you can always go to my Instagram. I will tell you, like, I'm not the best at Instagram, but I'm there, and there will probably always be a link in there that you can go to. And my Instagram is Body Literacy Lab for the number 4 kids. And then I'll get you a link that you can post in the show notes that will just kind of be an evergreen. They can find out what's going on at that time. Because sometimes my course is open, sometimes it's not. I don't leave enrollment open all the time for that or my membership, but there's always something coming up in the works. So
Awesome.
you can keep your eye on that or get on my email list and you'll be informed. So
Great. Well, this has been such a pleasure, Darcy, and I'm so glad that you could come on and share. Thank you so much.
yeah, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Happy homeschooling, everyone. Take care.